CEE,
Central Europe Explained.
an IDM podcast series
powered by Erste Group.
Episode 57, From Poland's Border, Insights on Migration from Polish Activists. Welcome to Central Europe Explained. I am Malwina Talik, and today we are diving into the topic of migration in Central Europe. Yes, it's migration again, a topic that has become very divisive over the last decade, and almost everyone seems to have an opinion on it. I'm pretty sure that you have probably found yourself in at least one heated discussion with someone who has different views on migration than you do. Migration is often framed as a matter of national security, but today I want to shift that focus. We'll be exploring this topic through the experiences of activists who support refugees and other migrants. For some, they are heroes. For others, naive idealists. Their commitment often comes with a personal cost. Many encounter public backlash, some even face legal repercussions. So, how much do you actually know about the people who support migrants? How do they see their work? And how do they assess the current situation in Central Europe? To gain a deeper understanding of the perspectives of Central European activists, I will be speaking with Marianna Wartecka, Director of Partnerships and Advocacy, as well as board member at Fundacja Ocalenie Foundation Rescue, a Polish NGO. Marianna graduated in theater studies and law. She entered the field of migration in 2016. Since 2021, she has been volunteering to provide humanitarian assistance to people on the move at the Polish-Belarusian border. Marianna, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for invitation.
Let's start with the first question, which is about your career path. What brought you to this particular field? Have you planned it before, or was it more by chance?
I started my professional career around 2010. And since the beginning, it was in marketing, communication, PR. And then after like 5-6 years of work, I started feeling more and more burned out because of the lack of like deeper meaning that I felt in my line of work. It was around 2015 when the migrants were coming to Europe, and the large number of them, and the topic it was discussed a lot, and also in Poland it's aligned in time with parliamentary campaign before the parliamentary elections, before the first win of the Law and Justice Party. And the rhetoric against migrants and refugees became very hostile in Poland very quickly, as it was a part of this campaign. There were statements about them spreading diseases, so it was really disgusting and the worst kind of propaganda you can imagine. And around that time, I decided that I wanted to do maybe something small to counter it, just a little bit. So I found this volunteering opportunity at Ocalenie Foundation, and I started teaching Polish to migrants and refugees living in Poland as a volunteer. But then in 2019, there was an opportunity for me to join as a permanent staff. I decided to quit my safe job and to start something new. I had to take a step back in terms of position and salary, etc. But I was like really certain that I wanted to do that, and I wanted to start working in this particular NGO and in this particular area, which is supporting migrants and refugees. And I joined the communication and fundraising team. And then things developed pretty quickly as many crises came. I definitely feel more in line with my personal views and values since I joined the foundation, and I started communicating and promoting and fundraising for this particular purpose.
From what I gathered from what you were saying, there must have been more and more people also joining your organization, but also people who were willing to support migrants, and among them also refugees in the past years. And As you mentioned, you were working in another field and then you were volunteering for many years. So additionally to your job, you were also having your volunteer activities next to it. Do you think that this is a very usual path for people working in your field? Is your story very unusual, very typical?
I would say it's quite typical, probably. We have many employees who started at the foundation as volunteers. It's not necessarily in the middle of their careers, as it happened with me. So somewhere, after 5 or 6 years after I started my professional career, I just decided to change the fields. Still doing more or less the same things because I still worked in communications. I was still kind of selling ideas, but they were different ideas.
As you've already mentioned, you have been in this field for quite a while, so you could have observed how it has been changing. And what is your perception of that?
Well, I think unfortunately it's getting more challenging and more difficult. First, it was COVID and lockdowns that affected our clients deeply. Many refugees and migrants work in direct services. They often have contracts that don't provide them with social security. So they were affected by lockdowns pretty quickly and harshly, and they became very quickly very dependent on basic support like food support. And then in 2021, the humanitarian crisis on the Belarusian border started, and our organization started operating there very quickly. At first, we thought it was a standalone incident. We will intervene and try to help solving it. But as we now know, it was just the beginning of something very complex and long term, unfortunately. And we are still present there. We still provide humanitarian assistance to people on the move on the border. We were able to start doing that in a professional way. We became a humanitarian organization that is involved in emergency support, something we had never done before. It also helped us with our emergency response after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which, as you know, happened in 2022.
Poland is an interesting case in the migration landscape. Traditionally, it hasn't been a main destination for refugees and migrants, but this has changed noticeably in the recent years, and now it affects both public debate and policy. Recently, Poland announced a temporary suspension of the right to asylum at its borders with Belarus. Marianna explains why she's watching such developments with a growing concern.
What we are witnessing, in my opinion, is the right-wing and very populist agenda became mainstream in the area of migration, and the perception of migrants, including refugees, is now mainly focused on security issues. This is something that is, in my opinion, very scary and can lead to more, and probably will lead to more tragedies and more deaths of migrants, including refugees and people, generally people seeking safety, seeking better and more secure lives. So it is happening in Poland, it is happening in all European Union, and initiatives as the initiative of the recent initiative of Polish government and Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who proposed the country should have a right to suspend the right to seek asylum because of geopolitical issues. And initiatives like that are met with acceptance over the European Union. And it is very hard to find a path through it, to be honest. We have to change the way we communicate what we do. We have to change the way we try to advocate for those that we support. We are dealing with a lot of issues and a lot of challenges. And this political change and this acceptance for seeing migrants and refugees as weapons, not humans. This is the biggest challenge that we are facing now, and something that will be a long-term thing.
Have you observed any big changes in the way that the society perceives migrants and refugees? Because you have mentioned a lot of events that have taken place starting from 2015 to the cases instrumentalizing migration by Russia and Belarus, then to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and a lot of refugees coming to Poland. How was the public perception of migrants and refugees in Poland right now, in your opinion?
People are getting more and more scared of migrants, including refugees, and it is quite visible in all the research that has been done since 2015, but also the polls that were done right after the humanitarian crisis at the Belarusian border started were showing overwhelming support for humanitarian assistance to people who are there. It's no longer the case. And now the overwhelming support is in favor of the right to shoot in to actually to lift a criminal responsibility for soldiers and other armed personnel who might use the firearms in a incorrect way. The criminal responsibility was lifted for them if they operate at the border area, and also the acceptance for racism, hate speech is much higher than it was 10 years ago. And I think this is also something that will continue to grow. So we will be dealing with more cases of violence and abuse towards migrants, including refugees, both on systemic level and on this day-to-day level.
Do you think that this also influences the way how your profession is being perceived? Have you observed any changes here over the years?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we are presented even by governmental officials, high-rank governmental officials, as stupid, naive, idealistic, and not able to see the big picture, the big geopolitical picture, which is obviously not true. We see it very, very clearly. We are actually dealing with consequences of this geopolitical big picture in ways that might be unimaginable for those governmental officials who maybe never spoke to anybody who actually felt victim to this big picture. And I'm not talking only about the situation at the border. I'm talking about people who, for example, felt victims to this corruption visa scheme that happened about 2 years ago. That the Polish consulates were involved, providing with student and working visas people who were not meeting the criteria for those visas, and they were cooperating with various intermediaries, I would say, both in the countries of origins and in Poland, with fake academic institutions, and people who obtained visas through this scheme. They were victims of this process. But now they are in Poland and we receive a lot of them, trying to support them legally, trying to help them with legalizing their stay, which is actually almost impossible. And many of them spent their lifelong money on this. They were lied to by the intermediary in their country of origin. Then they were lied to by some kind of shady job agency in Poland. So, and, and they are the primary victims of this situation, not the perpetrators. And the perception of them is as if they were the criminals in all of that, not the people who made money on it, including public officials, including people working in Polish consulates. So we actually see those people, we meet with them every day, and we are really very much aware of the big picture of how the world works and how unjust and unfair it is. But we also know who is the primary victim in all of that. And it's not Poland's security. It's those people whose lives are very often ruined because of what happened to them. They actually have no other place to go other than our organizations similar to us for many years, the NGOs working with migrants and refugees in Poland were stepping in and doing the job that actually the state should be doing, and it hasn't changed since the change of the government. There are some efforts being undertaken by the current government right now. They are actually in the process of opening 49 integration centers for migrants around Poland, but it will be happening very slowly. It's supposed to start next year, but we are quite far away from a situation where there is actually a systemic support in place, even for regular migrants, because those centers are actually being established for regular migrants only. So still, irregular migrants will be left with one option, which is NGOs.
Your work is very much about a mission, right? It's mission driven. I believe that some people don't really see that. And to those who are skeptical of your work, of your activities, how would you convince them that they actually need you? They need people supporting refugees and other migrants. You already mentioned that very often you step in when the government, when the state is missing, when does not provide assistance. What other arguments would you use if confronted with a person who suggests they don't?
I wouldn't start with arguments. I would start asking them what they are afraid of, really, because I get it that that this large-scale global processes like migration, they can be very scary. This is something that a single person has virtually no influence over, no control. And I would think the role of a responsible government should be like this, just trying to start a dialogue with the society and with people in the society and asking them, what actually are you afraid of? And instead of doing that, what the government does is making them more scared, picturing migrants and refugees as a main risk factor for the public security, which is ridiculous. It's not how regimes and hostile intelligence operates. They have better ways of, for example, installing spies in Poland and forcing them through a fence. So they're picturing those people as the main risk factor. They're not talking about the real risk factors that we should be facing. And in the same time, instead of asking the society about what they are really afraid of and trying to address those fears that, as I said, are absolutely understandable. And I also sometimes ask myself those questions like, where is it going? What are we going to do with all of that? This large scale migration, it is a very complex and difficult issue that should be discussed in a calm and moderated manner. And it's very political and it is very populistic and it is connected with all those fears that people have. And those fears are used ruthlessly for a political gain by politicians in Poland and in other EU countries. So, yeah, if I had a chance to talk to this broader general public that I usually don't have access to because I don't, our resources are limited. I think I would start with asking questions and with trying to understand more what are the main reasons of this fear. And then maybe I would start thinking about addressing them in a way that, that I acknowledge them, I don't dismiss them.
I think that might be a very good approach, and also the escalation of the debate, the discussion, which is already very polarized, not only in Poland, but seems in the rest of Europe as well, and definitely doesn't help the whole situation. But let's try to switch something a bit more positive. And is there any particular and powerful story from refugees and the migrants that you have worked with that you would like to share, or that you were thinking about for years, or that shaped your approach to the work you do?
Uh, I don't think there is one particular story. When I can see that someone who was really scared and insecure and starts making this small progress and reaching the point that for many of us are something very basic, like renting a room where they can really stay for more than few weeks and finding a job, sending kids to school and this kid starting speaking Polish very fast. You sometimes just can see on the faces of people that they are in a better place after a few months or a year. I think for me that things like that work best. More of a grassroots organic kind of person who is really happy with signs of small progress and seeing people who are able to live in dignity instead of living in a way that no human should really be facing. That's something that is most important for me.
And do you think that Central Europe, Poland, is a place, a country where they can start anew, where they can rebuild their lives and live in dignity?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think Poles like to still see themselves as, I don't know, victims of the geopolitics and global situation. And we like to compare ourselves to Western European countries and because of that, see ourselves as less privileged. But that's not really the case. When you do that, when you compare yourself to, I don't know, Germany or Sweden, you're comparing yourself to the wealthiest countries in the world. And the really overwhelming majority of the world is less fortunate than Poland. So obviously, people who come to Poland from less developed countries and from the global south, and very often from places that are just impossible to live in anymore, for them, Poland is a place that is comparatively wealthy, comparatively safe, and it is a place when they can start building better, more secure and stable lives.
Much of what Marianna has shared resonates deeply with my own feelings about the situation in Central Europe. The ongoing migration and humanitarian crisis at the Poland-Belarus border was a turning point for me too. I was troubled by the severity of the state's response and the increasingly hostile language of the public debate. This experience pushed me to focus analytically and academically on migration, especially instrumentalized migration. It also made me reflect on the many refugees and migrants from Central and Eastern Europe over the decades or even centuries who were forced to leave their homes due to war, shifting borders, political regimes, or simply poverty. What I find reassuring in our conversation with Marianna is that even in places that may appear less welcoming, migrants and refugees can still find a safe haven and start over. I feel grateful for activists like Marianna who support these people much as others has once helped refugees from Central Europe in the past. Lastly, as we near the end of our discussion, I asked Marianna to recommend our audience a piece of art that reflects this topic. Here's her recommendation.
I really like Human Flow by Weiwei, the documentary movie. For me, it was a kind of a game changer in the way I became able to see the big picture that we as the naive activists supposedly are not able to see, like the big picture of how migration works globally and how big this process is and how unstoppable really. So I became more and more aware of the fact that no one can really control it. It's in human nature. Some people just like to move and others have to move. So really, migration isn't something that we can control in a way that our politicians imagine they can do that. So just stop it or regularize it 100%. It's not possible.
Thank you, Marianna, for sharing your insights and experiences. Your commitment to help migrants and refugees against the backdrop of all these challenges is truly inspiring. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the lives of Poland's activists and the people they support. Stay tuned for more episodes of Central Europe Explained. My name is Malwina Talik, and until next time.
This was CEE, Central Europe Explained, a podcast series produced by the Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe. If you enjoyed listening to us, make sure to subscribe to the IDM podcast series on your favorite podcast platform. Additionally, you can explore our other work on our website www.idm.at. If you have any feedback or if you're interested in collaborating on a podcast episode, please do not hesitate to contact us through our social media channels at IDM Vienna or write us an email to idm@idm.at.
IDM Podcast.
Institut für den Donauraum und Mitteleuropa.
Institute for the Danube Region and Central Europe.
European perspectives.
Regional actions.
Cooperation and expertise.